So let's also talk about something that was crucial not only to your individual style of playing, but what ultimately became heavy metal as a result, which is the industrial accident that cost you parts of your fingers,
Yeah.
your fingertips. If you could tell us a little bit about, some of you may not be familiar with that, and how that ultimately changed the way that you play and changed the way that all of us play.
Well, I worked in a factory like most people from where I lived. Worked in a factory, and I learned to do welding, gas welding and arc welding, electric welding. And so I had this job, which was a good job, if you like jobs. I'd be on a line, and they'd pass stuff down to me, and I'd weld it, and then it'd go on to somewhere else. And the one day, the person that would be sending me the thing to weld, it never turned up, so they put me on this giant, huge press, I mean massive, a guillotine type press that would come down, bang, and bend the metal. And so I'm there with this machine, and I don't know what happened. I must have pushed my hand in, and of course, bang, it came down, and it just took the ends. I actually pulled them off. As I pulled my hand back, it sort of pulled them off, and it was left with two stalks sticking out, the bone sticking out the top of the finger. But it's ironic because the day that happened, I was going to leave that job because I'd had an offer to join a band to go professional and to go to Germany and to play in Europe, which was for me a fantastic opportunity. And I'd rehearsed with this band and everything, and I was due to, and I went home for lunch, and my mother said, I said, I'm not going back now. That's it. Now I'm finished. She went, you go back and finish off the job properly. Don't just leave like that. So God. So I went back, and sure enough, that's what happened. They put me on the machine, bang. So of course my mother got total blame for that. But it's just the way things are. You just never know what's around the corner, and that happened, and of course, and that changed my life entirely, because I thought, well, that's it. I went to the hospital, and they cut the bones off, and then they said, you might as well forget playing. And God, I was just so upset, and I wouldn't accept that there wasn't some way around it that I could be able to play. And so I sat at home, being miserable and moping about, and eventually somebody the manager of the factory brought me a record round, and it was an EP at that time, and he says, I want you to listen to this. I went, no, I don't want to listen to this. It's going to get more upset listening to another guitar player, He said, no, listen to it. So I listened to it. I went, yeah, it's really great. And then he said it was Django Reinhardt, who had had an accident to his hand as well. And so it really sort of inspired me more to be able to overcome what had happened. And so I went to I tried to see different doctors, and they all said, no, you can't do it. And so I made my own tips. I got a washing up bottle, a plastic bottle, and melted it down into a ball. And then I got a hot soldering iron and would drill a hole out in it and fit it over my finger. So there's this big ball on my finger. And then I'd sit there for days just rubbing it down to make a shape of a finger. And I mean, it took a long time, and I'm trying to play with it, and it hurt, and I couldn't bend any string or anything. So I had to come up with an idea of what I could put on to grip the string, and I tried different cloths and material and just ripped off. And I had this old leather jacket from my rocker days, and so I decided to cut it up and put try this leather, and it was great because it was a really old jacket. And glued it on, and it worked. But then I had to persevere for a long, long time to get to be able to get used to working with them. Because you imagine a big thing on the end of your finger, you know, and trying to find a guitar, you can't feel anything.
Yeah.
You can't feel a guitar
And then
string.
the amount of nerves that we have in our fingertips.
And it was painful. It was painful. So I used to try and put tape underneath it so it would buffle it a bit, you know.
It reminds me of, you know, like it's a movie trope of like heist movies where, you know, it's one more job, one more bank, you know, going into the factory, and
Yeah.
I'm almost done here, and then that happens. Tell us a little bit then too about how that also changed, you know, the string gauges that you played and the tunings that you played in and all these things eventually.
It sort of changed everything, really. I mean, not just that. The whole guitar had to be different for me. And so I'd sit work. I mean, I learnt a lot about the guitar, that's for sure. I'd have the thing in bits every day, everything off, bridge off the lot, doing the neck, filing all the frets down, and just trying to get it as easy as I could, that I wouldn't have to press hard on the strings. So I made it the strings as low as the frets as low as I could without them, you know, going horrible. And then I went to the next stage of trying to find light strings, which of course there was no light strings in them days. They were all heavy, quite heavy really. And if you're normal fingers, it's fine, but when you're like this, it's painful. So I had to make a setup of my own, and I bought some banjo strings, and I used the first banjo strings because they were light, and then I dropped the gauge down so that it'd make basically a light gauge set, and that's what I did. I used that for years, and then I went to string companies saying, you know, can you make me some light gauge strings? I went, light gauge strings? You can't do that. I said, you can. I said, I've got them, I use them. I went, nah, they'll never sell. They'll never do any good. It's really peculiar, isn't it? You know. And I found this company in Wales called Picato, and they said, we'll make them for you. So they made me my own sets of these light gauge strings. And I used them for years. And then, of course, other companies then started doing light gauge strings, you know. But it's ironic. You have to sort of prove everything before anybody will accept and have a go at it.
Of course. I mean, that's, you know, not to put you on the spot, but that's innovation. That's what innovators do. That's,
yeah.
You know, you blaze a trail for
that's right. Yeah.
the rest of us to follow.
Well, first of all, I went to play drums, but I could never set a drum. There were too noisy at home. I probably couldn't afford them anyway. So I wanted to play guitar later on, and I got a guitar. The first guitar was one of those, well, a cheap one. Being left-handed was really difficult as well for me to get a guitar. So I think I bought one of those K clubs or something, the original guitar. And I really enjoyed playing it. So then I wanted, of course, to be a guitar player. Yeah, I had an accident many years ago. As you can see here, when we went there, that finger and that finger, where I used to do sheet metal work. What happened one day, the day I was leaving, funny enough, from the job to turn professional, the old turn professional one, and I was doing pressing this piece of metal that I used to have to weld afterwards, and the press just came straight down on me, and of course, as you pull it back, I pulled the ends of the fingers off. And at the time, I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe what I'd done. So I thought that was it. I was never play again. And what happened was a friend of mine brought me a record. It was the first time I was introduced to Django Reinhardt, who had also got, you know, damaged two fingers, and played with 2 fingers. And it got me back into playing, and I suppose it was 6 or 7 months later. And I started trying to play with these 2 fingers, like that. So these were bandaged up, and I was playing with these 2, which got me to use the little finger as opposed to that finger. And then, of course, I went to try and find some kind of, to the hospital, try and find some kind of tip made so that I could put on, because, of course, if I play here, the string would just rip the skin off because the bone's right underneath. And they said, oh, there's nothing can be done, you'll have to pack up playing and whatever. So I went back home and I got a squeezy bottle and melted it down, made it into a ball, got a hot soldering iron and made a sort of hole in it, and got it down to fit my finger. So I've got this big ball on the end of my finger. Then I sat there all night, filing it down with some sandpaper to make a shape of a thimble. Then I put some leather on it because it wouldn't grip otherwise. It was plastic, it'd just slip off the string. I put some leather on, which made something like this, which is a plastic and then leather on it. And I used that and off I went. I mean, it's really weird to play with, it was at first, but you get used to it. And there's certain things I probably wouldn't be able to do that most people could do. But there's other things I've come up with a different sort of style of playing, and probably more unorthodox way, but I got away with it.